पेणच्या गागोदच्या परिसरामध्ये जन्माला आले. होय, माझी अर्थसंकल्पाच्या या सर्वसाधारण चर्चेच्या माध्यमातून विनंती आहे, 4 भारतरत्न ही भाग्यवान आहे. देशातल्या 543 खासदारांमधला एकमेव खासदार आहे की ज्याच्या मतदारसंघामध्ये 4 भारतरत्न जन्माला आली. हा देश 2047 सालामध्ये कसा असेल याचं स्वप्न नव्हे तर प्रत्यक्षात कृती करण्यासाठी नरेंद्र मोदी साहेबांच्या नेतृत्वाखालचं सरकार पाऊलं उचलत आहे. देशातल्या 140 कोटी जनतेला विश्वास आहे की 2047 साल आम्ही असू किंवा नसू मला माहीत नाही, पण 2047 सालामध्ये जगामध्ये महाराष्ट्र सत्ता म्हणून भारत देश अमेरिकेपेक्षा पुढं असेल याचा विश्वास मला आहे. आणि याच्या माध्यमातून जी काय पायाची उभारणी त्या ठिकाणी मोदी साहेबांच्या नेतृत्वाखाली केली गेलेली आहे त्याची वाटचाल यशस्वीपणाने त्या ठिकाणी होईल. 4 भारतरत्नांचं स्मारक अशा बंद करावं. जगभरातले इतिहास संशोधक त्या सगळ्या परिसरामध्ये येतील आणि त्यांच्या माध्यमातून एक नवीन पिढीला सुद्धा प्रेरणा मिळण्याचं एक चित्र आपल्याला त्या ठिकाणी पाहायला मिळू शकेल. आज मला या ठिकाणी यानिमित्ताने सांगायचं आहे की स्वर्गीय चव्हाण साहेबांनी महाराष्ट्र घडवला. महाराष्ट्राचा मंगल कलश त्यांनी शिवाजी पार्कच्या ऐतिहासिक मैदानावरती आणला. सुसंस्कृत विचाराच्या माध्यमातून महाराष्ट्र घडवण्याच्या दृष्टीतून पावलं माझ्या महाराष्ट्रामध्ये त्या ठिकाणी उमटली गेली. आज त्यालाच गती देण्याचं काम इंडियाच्या सरकारच्या माध्यमातून निश्चितपणे घडेल याच्यात कोणाच्या मनामध्ये ती मात्र शंकाच काही कारण नाही. विरोधाला विरोध करायचा पण सोडावं. बघावं आपण अर्थसंकल्पामध्ये बघावं की मुंबईच्या रेल्वेसाठी काय योजना दिल्या गेलेल्या आहेत. महाराष्ट्राच्या भवितव्यासाठी आम्हाला काय नेमकं करायचं आहे. होय, माझी अपेक्षा या ठिकाणी आहे की आज कांदा उत्पादक शेतकऱ्यांचा त्या ठिकाणी प्रश्न आहे. निर्यात होण्याच्या अवतीमध्ये सुद्धा काहीतरी आपल्याला धोरण त्या ठिकाणी आखावं लागेल. शेतकऱ्यांना न्याय देण्याच्या दृष्टीकोनातून प्रयत्नाची पराकाष्ठा करावं लागेल. MSP मगाशी उल्लेख या ठिकाणी केला गेला, पण MSP 2014च्या नंतर सुद्धा 4 ते 14 पर्यंत वाढवलं गेलंच. किमान आधारभूत किंमत या देशामध्ये वाढली गेली, पण त्याच्याहीपेक्षा जास्त चढत्या क्रमांक जर का कुठे वाढली गेली असेल तर नरेंद्र मोदी साहेब या देशामध्ये पंतप्रधान झाल्याच्या नंतर या देशातील शेतकरी वर्गाला फार मोठ्या प्रमाणावरती त्या ठिकाणी न्याय मिळाला. पण कांदा उत्पादक शेतकरी असेल, ऊस उत्पादक शेतकरी असेल, सोयाबीन उत्पादक शेतकरी असेल, कास उत्पादक शेतकरी असेल, या शेतकऱ्याला न्याय देण्याची भूमिका सुद्धा पुढच्या कालावधीमध्ये करणं हे सरकारचं कर्तव्य त्या ठिकाणी ठरू शकतं. पुढच्या कालावधीमध्ये सुद्धा अधिक गतीने आपल्याला त्या ठिकाणी काम करायचं आहे. देखिए, मुझे उसके बारे में कुछ कहना नहीं चाहता हूँ. मैं यही कहना चाहता हूँ कि भारत को किसानों के लिए जो कुछ न्याय देने का प्रयास एनडीए के सरकार के माध्यम से हुआ है और आगे कुछ करने की कोशिश वहाँ पे करनी चाहिए, उसमें दो राय नहीं है. देयर इज नो डिस्प्यूट इन दैट. भारत कृषी प्रधान देश आहे. जगाच्या पाठीवरती निर्यात करणारा मोजक्या देशांच्या मध्ये आज माझा भारत देश त्या ठिकाणी आहे. आणि म्हणूनच चढत्या क्रमाने जर का आम्हाला अर्थव्यवस्था वाढवायची असेल या देशातल्या या संबंध शेतकरी किसान उत्पादक किसानांना सुद्धा न्याय देण्याची प्रक्रिया पुढच्या कालावधीमध्ये केली गेली पाहिजे. अनेक गोष्टी आहेत की ज्याच्यातून आज आपल्याला अनेक गोष्टी कराव्या लागतात. आरक्षणाच्या प्रश्नाच्यामुळे महाराष्ट्रामध्ये काही व्यक्ती काही प्रवृत्ती जाणीवपूर्वक खतपाणी घालत महाराष्ट्राच्या शाहू फुले आंबेडकरांच्या सामाजिक समतेला धक्का देण्याचा प्रयत्न त्या ठिकाणी करत आहेत. मला विनंती आहे या माध्यमातून सुद्धा की सुवर्ण महाराष्ट्र या देशाच्या पाठीवरती एक दिशादेशक म्हणून या महाराष्ट्रांची काय यशस्वीपणाने वाटचाल केलेली आहे ती वाटचाल पुढच्या कालावधीमध्ये त्याच पद्धतीने आम्हाला गतिमान ठेवायची असेल तर इंडियाच्या सरकारशिवाय आम्हाला झुकतं माप त्या ठिकाणी मिळू शकत नाही. आम्हाला विश्वास आहे की महाराष्ट्रामध्ये आज महायुतीच्या सरकारच्या माध्यमातून जी महाराष्ट्राची मुख्यमंत्री लाडकी बहीण योजना त्या ठिकाणी करण्यात आलेली आहे, ज्याच्या माध्यमातून महाराष्ट्रामध्ये पुन्हा एकदा देशातल्या या इंडियाच्या सरकारच्या माध्यमातून अधिकाधिक योगदान मिळत पुन्हा एकदा ऑक्टोबर येणाऱ्या निवडणुकीमध्ये महाराष्ट्रामध्ये महायुतीचं सरकार येईल याच्यात माझ्या मनामध्ये ती मात्र सरकारचं काही कारण नाही. पण त्याच्यामुळेच महाराष्ट्र द्रोह असा विचार मनामध्ये काहीतरी वेगळ्या पद्धतीने केलं जात आहे असा आभास निर्माण करण्याचा जो काही प्रयत्न केला जातो आहे तो अत्यंत चुकीचा आहे असं मला या ठिकाणी यानिमित्त सांगायचं आहे. आज महाराष्ट्रातला एक खासदार या नात्याने या सरकारला माझी नम्रतेची विनंती आहे. या स्वर्गीय चव्हाण साहेबांनी सुसंस्कृत महाराष्ट्र घडवल्या त्या चव्हाण साहेबांना सुद्धा भारतरत्न त्या ठिकाणी देऊन त्यांचा यथोचित गौरव महाराष्ट्राचा यथोचित गौरव या सरकारने करावा अशी माझी विनंती या ठिकाणी आहे. महाराष्ट्राचे मुख्यमंत्री बॅरिस्टर अंतुले यांना सुद्धा पद्मश्रीचा पुरस्कार त्या ठिकाणी देऊन त्यांनी केलेल्या कार्याचा गौरव सुद्धा त्या ठिकाणी व्हावा अशापैकी विनंती त्या ठिकाणी माझी मनापासूनची करायची. महाराष्ट्राच्या मराठी भाषेला मी आज मराठी या ठिकाणी का बोलतोय, मला इंग्रजी बोलता येत असल्यानं नाही भाग मी हिंदीमध्ये सुद्धा बोलू शकतो, इंग्रजीमध्ये सुद्धा बोलू शकतो. पण तुम्ही एक प्रतिज्ञा केली, जोपर्यंत मराठी भाषेला अभिजात भाषेचा दर्जा मिळत नाही तोपर्यंत मी माझ्या मराठी भाषेतच त्या ठिकाणी भाषण करणार आहे. संत श्रेष्ठ ज्ञानेश्वर माऊलीने माझ्या मराठीची बोलू कौतुके, परी अमृतातही पैजासी जिंके, ऐशी अक्षरे रसिके मेळवीन. संत ज्ञानेश्वर महाराजांनी, संत तुकोबारायांनी संत साहित्याच्या माध्यमातून महाराष्ट्र अतिशय आध्यात्मिक विचारसरणीच्या माध्यमातून घडवला. त्या महाराष्ट्राला गतिमान करण्याच्या दृष्टीकोनातून या केंद्र सरकारच्या माध्यमातून या अर्थसंकल्पातसुद्धा झुकतं दिलेलं आहे. कोणाच्याही मनामध्ये ती मात्र शंकाचं काही कारण आहे. पण जसं संविधानाच्या नावाने तुम्ही नॅरेटिव्ह सेट केलं तसं आज महाराष्ट्राच्या निवडणुका नजरेसमोर ठेवत भारत सरकारने महाराष्ट्रावरती अन्याय केला आहे असा आभास निर्माण करण्याचा तुम्ही जो प्रयत्न करताय, माझ्या महाराष्ट्रातली 13 कोटी जनता निर्विवादपणाने तुम्हाला झुलकावून राहील. नरेंद्र मोदींच्या नेतृत्वाखाली यशस्वीपणाने वाटचाल करण्यासाठी तिसऱ्यांदा ज्यावेळेला 140 कोटी जनतेने स्पष्टपणाचा कौल ज्यावेळेला त्या ठिकाणी दिलेला आहे, अरविंदजी हे पदकवीर जेवढे तुम्ही मला दाखवतात यांच्या राज्याला जेवढा निधी दिला आहे तेवढा निधी महाराष्ट्राला वाढवण बंधनाला दिला. तुम्ही आता विरोध करण्याचं सोडा आणि महाराष्ट्रातल्या 10 लाख जनतेला वाढवणचं बंधन वर्गाची तुमच्याकडे आहे हे मला दाखवता. 2च पदकवीर आहेत, म्हणजे कोण? तर चंद्रबाबू नायडू आणि बिहारचे मुख्यमंत्री नितीश कुमार नाही. तिसरे पण आहेत, एकनाथराव शिंदे, देवेंद्र फडणवीस, अजितदादा सुद्धा आहेत. न मागता या सरकारने 78,000 कोटी रुपयाचं वाढवणचं बंदर दिलं. त्याला विरोध करण्याचं पाप तुम्ही करू नका. 10 लाख तरुणांना रोजगार देण्याचा क्रांतिकारी प्रकल्प ज्या परिसरामध्ये होत आहे तो इंडियाच्या 3ऱ्या कालखंडामध्ये होत आहे. याचा महाराष्ट्रातला खासदार म्हणून आम्हाला अभिमान आहे. आणि महाराष्ट्रातल्या 12 कोटी जनता या नेतृत्वावरती शिक्कामोर्तब करत, निर्मलाजी तुम्ही जो अर्थसंकल्प या ठिकाणी मांडलात, महिलांच्यासाठी तुम्ही ज्या काही योजना दिल्यात, माझं महाराष्ट्राचं सरकार त्या योजना राबवण्याच्या दृष्टिकोनातून सक्षमपणाने त्या ठिकाणी काम करत राहील एवढा विश्वास या ठिकाणी व्यक्त करतो. त्यांनी मांडलेल्या अर्थसंकल्पाचं अंतःकरणापासून महाराष्ट्रातला एक मराठी खासदार त्याने स्वागत करत असताना ज्या काही योजना त्यांनी दिल्या त्या योजनांना विरोध करण्याचं पाप महाविकास आघाडी न करता इंडियाच्या पाठीमागे महाराष्ट्रातली 12 कोटी जनता जी का उभे राहून हा नरेंद्र मोदींच्या नेतृत्वाखाली जी काय विकास पाहत आहे त्या विकासाला गतिमान करण्यासाठी आपल्या सर्वांचा आशीर्वादाचं पाठबळ या ठिकाणी राहू द्या. मी पुन्हा एकदा सांगतो, आय एम द ओनली वन, फक्त एकटाच मी या ठिकाणी खासदार आहे. तर या ट्रेझरी बेंचच्या वतीने मला या ठिकाणी बोलण्याची संधी दिली. टॉवरिंग पर्सनॅलिटी, उंचीच्या पर्सनॅलिटी कशा असू शकतात हे भारतीय जनता पक्षाने या ठिकाणी दाखवलं. हे सुद्धा मला आवर्जून या ठिकाणी सांगायचं आहे. तुमचे आभार आणि पुन्हा एकदा या माध्यमातून देश गतिमान करण्याचं काम आपण करूया अशी विनंती करतो आणि थांबतो. जय हिंद, जय महाराष्ट्र.
माननीय सदस्य श्री शौकत रायजी.
Madam, I rise to speak on the budget. Good that the finance minister is here. Yesterday, Abhishek Banerjee from our party has enunciated all the objections we have to the budget, particularly with regard to the dues to West Bengal on the account of NREGA and Indira Awas Yojana. The government has always been strangely silent on these demands of West Bengal. I again reiterate the same. This has proved to be the most divisive budget in recent times, because a budget is supposed to present the future plans of the government. But this is a budget which is called AB budget, Andhra Bihar budget. They have allotted 59,000 crores to Bihar, 15,000 crores to Andhra Pradesh for a new capital. At least 3 Congress chief ministers, 1 Punjab chief minister, Tamil Nadu chief minister has opposed the budget, and of course our West Bengal chief minister has called this budget an exercise to save the government, and she also said that the budget gave zero to West Bengal. Now, Madam, I want to say
Please,
that this budget,
don't disturb.
Kerala Chief Minister has also opposed the budget, right? Madam, this budget speech, I read it very carefully several times. It's a copy and paste job. They have taken, Congress has already complained that it is taken from their Nyaya Patra. I have seen that you look at 26 education loans. It is the exact program given by West Bengal government for students. Exact, same 10 lakhs. You are not even original. I do not expect the finance minister to be like Dr. Manmohan Singh. She is not a PhD from Oxford, not even like Chidambaram, who's got a management degree from Harvard. She's from our own JNU. But the problem is that she is bereft. She is bereft of new ideas, which is why this budget reads very dull. And then you realize that all the notes in the budget, they have come from the PMO. Whatever PMO has said, she has no original idea. She has put it in the budget, in the copy and paste type. Now, this year, the budget, the finance minister vowed to spend 2 lakh crores over 5 years on 5 schemes, which are part of what she called the Prime Minister's package, aimed at spurring jobs and imparting skills to 4.1 crore youth. This marked a shift in strategy from the previous government's preferred reliance in letting multiplier and trickle-down effects. Formerly they said, you give a lot of money, something will trickle down. But now, earlier they did not give any direct handouts to any section of society. The trigger why the budget has changed course is due to the BJP's electoral reverses, where there is a government without a majority. Abhishek called it shaky government. I would call it further brittle government, just like a glass. It may break at any time. The FM tried to address the perceived disenchantment among the youth, the salaried class, farmers and small entrepreneurs. One important thing, Madam, you should take note, that just before the election, the revelations came about the donations received for electoral bonds. BJP alone got 50% of all electoral bonds received by all political parties, 50%, which meant what? This is a government of the moneyed class. As some people say, of the Adanis and Ambanis who contributed to your election, even to yours, Nishikantji. Please don't forget. आपने देखा है? Did you see the revelations?
Let him speak.
Given to
आप जब
Supreme Court.
बोलेंगे तब जवाब दे देंगे.
अरे अदानी
मैडम
तो एक
बोलेंगी जवाब दे देंगे.
टाइटल
आप बैठिए, बोलने दीजिए. नाम,
मैडम,
no name will be taken.
अदानी किसी को नाम नहीं है, टाइटल है.
बोल दिया. नहीं, आप
क्यों
पहले
बोलेंगे?
तो खत्म
क्यों?
कर दीजिए.
क्यों बोलेंगे?
खत्म करने दीजिए.
क्यों बोलेंगे?
खत्म करने दीजिए.
क्यों बोलेंगे? बोलছি. But in spite of all this, the stock market has reacted badly. It was wobbly because of the capital gains tax. So in spite of all this, the capitalists are not happy. Now, madam, I will emphasize what the basic problems of the Indian economy are and whether they have been addressed by the finance minister. According to data from Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, unemployment rate rose to an 8-month high of 9.2% in June 2024. The female unemployment rate was higher than the national average of 18.5% in June 2024. Now, we have been doing very poorly in terms of employment generation. You may be knowing, madam, that there has been job losses in the IT sector. Now, with AI, artificial intelligence coming in, there is fear of further job losses in what was seen as the most profitable part of Indian economy. The second big problem in India's economy is rising inflation. The annual consumer inflation rate in India rose to 5.08% in June 2024, well above market expectations. Prices accelerated steeply for food, 9.36%, which is responsible for nearly half of the weight of Indian consumer basket. One company called Cantor, they did a study and they found that in 2024-25, 34% households reported that they are finding it difficult to manage their expenses, indicating that a third of India is still under severe financial stress. The other problem is, madam, the shrinking informal sector. This is what has sustained the economy for so long, but informal sector is in grave crisis, as NSSO data show. India's 65 million informal or unincorporated sector enterprises employed 110 million workers. They are suffering very badly. What we call MSME, they are suffering. And the other big problem is falling private investment. The finance minister in our presence handed over a tax bonanza to the corporate sector. But private investment has been falling. The government has been hoping that large Indian corporations would step in and ramp up investment. But they introduced production-linked incentive schemes for big business. But all these incentives have failed to motivate private investors. They will spend money on their son's marriage, but will not invest in new enterprises. That is the big problem of Indian economy. Lastly, we have a problem of shrinking labor productivity. It shows that labor productivity is contracted in FY23 compared to the preceding year, thus highlighting India's lack of competitiveness in industrial sectors. This is what is called extreme disparity in wealth and income distribution had pushed the economy to a state of gated stagflation. Gated stagflation. That is what the economy is today. The finance minister must resort, please listen to this, must resort to Keynesian prescription of boosting aggregate demand by allocating more government funds for the social sector and targeted welfare programs that, like MGNREGA, increase government spending will boost household consumption, which will stimulate private investment. The finance minister has not gone this route at all. Now let me see, Madam, very important that we study the social sector. How much money the government has doled out to the poor. The allocation for school education has increased only by a nominal 5,000 crores. And for higher education, by only 3,000 crores. In both cases, estimated recoveries are substantially higher compared to previous year, indicating higher fees and self-financing schemes in educational institutions. Allocation for health and family welfare has barely increased by 1,500 crores. So health and education, this, as Dr. Amartya Sen is fond of saying, are the foundations of economy. And there we are not having enough money. There is hardly any increase in food subsidy too, despite the need for expanding coverage to current population level. Lastly, smaller yet critical schemes, listen to this, ma'am, that address vulnerable populations have not got much attention. There is only a slight increase of rupees 12,467 crores for Poshan scheme, that is school midday meal. That is actually less than the actual expenditure on this scheme. The other thing is that budgetary allocation for Anganwadis. Madam, you are familiar with all these things. Budgetary allocation for Anganwadis is only 21,200 crores. And it was only 20,554 crore last year. So it means what? There is clearly no hope for higher salaries for Anganwadi workers, which have not been revised in 2018. You have no sympathy for the poor Anganwadi worker girls. Shame. The other thing I want to mention is the budget for National Social Assistance Scheme. You are MP, ma'am. Old people come to you for widow pension and disabled pension. Look at this. The budget for National Social Assistance Program, which gives social security pension to the elderly, single women and disabled, remains unchanged. Not a rupee is added at 9,652 crores, which means this is a reduction in real terms, taking into account inflation. Madam, please consider. Lastly, new package is, they say, Prime Minister's package for employment and skilling. Includes government-sponsored internships, formalization of jobs through incentives for EPFO, Employees Provident Fund Organization enrollment, and skill development programs. These schemes do not seem, Madam, may I say, that these schemes do not seem very impressive when one looks at the budgetary allocation. You say that you are taking care of unemployment, but the entire package has an allocation of rupees 2 lakh crore over a period of 5 years. How much? 2 lakh crores in 5 years, 40,000 crores per year for employment generation. Further, the private sector is required to spend money towards this package from CSR funds. Pehle kya hota? Private sector used to develop a school, a hospital, this and that. Now, the Prime Minister is taking in the money from CSR fund by allowing this CSR fund through which companies contribute back to society in some minimal way are now mandated to be used towards subsidizing wages for themselves. How will this economy survive? Rather than discussing dampened demand, stagnant wage, And what can be done to revive employment? The announcement only includes supply side. You're like Milton Friedman. You're indulging in supply side economics. Only includes supply side schemes towards incentivizing the private sector. Private sector, our incentive though, they will create employment. Different versions of this have been tried earlier and have failed. Whether this package will be any different remains to be seen. So this, as Madam, I was saying earlier, is a disappointing anti-poor, anti-rich people, anti-poor people scheme. So, one question is, Madam, you have only discovered now, you have been minister for 7 years, though you are not a trained economist, you are lucky that way. And still, it never occurred to her. She is not a trained economist. What's wrong in saying that? She is no Manmohan Singh. She is not even Chidambaram. She is not even Ananta Nageshwar. Ma'am. Achha, why did you not act upon demands made by Bihar, Andhra Pradesh and Odisha earlier? Why are you thinking of them now? Only because of the political compulsions. In your brittle, unstable government, they are the crutches on which you live. And your economy, your budget is going haywire because lopsided because of all these things. India is more unequal now than in the 1920s. It's an unequal society that we have. During colonial rule, we are still somewhat more equal than we are today. Madam, Finance Minister, of course, has not dealt with inflation. Just 10 words on inflation. The most important problem affecting everyone. Ma'am, I will just give one or two figures and then wind up because my friend Shatabdi Rai is due to speak and she is naturally feeling disappointed as I go on and on. I'll wind up. Madam, see, they are saying that 11,11,000 crores for infrastructure. Good. They think that that is the be-all panacea for all the ills affecting the ready medicine. Has it been? One infrastructure project, Madam, will take 5 to 10 years to complete. There is an infrastructure project in your area, Damdam Barasat metro line. How many years it has taken now? And it is nowhere near completion. Problem of infrastructure is that it is long-term spin-off, no short-term spin-off. This does not appeal. I'll give you a figure. Even railway minister, they say Ashwini Vaishnav is a great railway minister. He has introduced Vande Bharat train. This year, FY24, railways at 5.42% of the budget. You know the budget is 48 lakh crores and the revenue is 32 lakh crores. Now railways have gone less, 5.42 to 5.3. Aviation, young Ram Naidu was waxing eloquent in the morning, but on, ma'am, I'm winding up. Even on aviation, the allocation is 0.05%, 0.05% of the budget. And on shipping, the allocation is 0.05%. Social sector spending, even on health, it is only 1.85% of the budget. Rural development, most important, 5.51% of the budget. Higher education, you want to educate the people. Privatize education, people will learn on their own. That's what the finance minister's prescription is. Higher education is 0.99% of the budget. School education, it has come down from 1.61 to 1.51% of the budget. Madam, this budget will not give relief to the poor in the country. This budget will not spur investment. This budget will not take from the rich and give it to the poor. And this budget will not stop conspicuous consumption by those who indulge in marriage feasts. This budget is for poor people to just look and gape at whatever happens in Mumbai. All the stars descending in Mumbai. With that, ma'am, I end my submission on the budget. Thank you.
माननीय सांसद श्री वैजयंत पंडा जी.
Madam Chairperson, as I rise to speak in support of the budget, I seek your indulgence. From the turn of the century, for almost 2 decades, I had the opportunity and I was privileged to speak many times on the budget in both the august houses. But I have been away for a while, for about 5.5 years, and now back as a member of this house, it is my great privilege to speak on this most important budget, but it is almost akin to a maiden speech. Madam, I compliment Honorable Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman ji on this historic budget. Historic because not only is it her 6th successive budget, I stand corrected, 7th successive budget, but the first one in the historic 3rd consecutive term headed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Madam, I wish to put this budget in the context of what has happened in the last 10 years. I will speak on the budget, but this context is important, madam, because we have just a few minutes ago heard a pining for the colonial era. We have heard a little bit before that weird allegations that this government is like the British Raj, which has just been contradicted by my previous speaker, who was pining for the colonial era of the 1920s. Madam, there are terms to describe this kind of an attitude, but I will remain parliamentary. And so the parliamentary term for it in social sciences is referred to as a westernized oriental gentleman, a wog. And that's because while you pine for the former masters and the degrees that they give from their countries and denigrate ours, those former masters don't respect you. Those former masters don't respect you. They refer to you, when they are charitable, as wogs. Madam, the context of the last 10 years is as follows. When Prime Minister Modi formed his first government 10 years ago, he inherited from the previous government a huge backlog of undone reforms. In fact, in the words of my friend, the honorable member from Thiruvananthapuram, you might call it a long laundry list of unattempted reforms. Starting with GST, going on with the bankruptcy code, and we could keep going on and on. Madam, this budget is both very wide in its scope, but also very deep in addressing the reforms that are necessary to take Bharat forward. Madam, for the last 5 years from outside this house, I have admired Nirmala Sitharaman ji's previous budgets when during the second Modi government, she consolidated on the deep fiscal reforms that were initiated in the first Modi government by my friend, the late Arun Jaitley. In the second term, during Nirmala ji's budgets being presented, India consistently remained the fastest growing large economy in the world. Now, sometimes questions are raised that what is the importance of being the fastest growing large economy? How does it benefit the Aam Aadmi? How does it benefit the average Bharatiya? I will tell you, madam. Because this growth has enabled the massive increases in allocations and the massive improvement in outputs and results that have been demonstrated in the last 10 years. And this has been commented upon by a wide variety of experts around the world. And I will refer to some of them. Now, if you look at just a few weeks ago, looking at the data coming out for the financial year that we just completed and entered this financial year, these are the words of some of the pink papers in both India and abroad. I quote one, but this has been repeated many different times. Quote, in 2024, India has experienced significant economic growth, with exports reaching a record high of $776 billion at an 11.8% increase. The unemployment rate has dropped to a record low of 3.1%, and business activity and job creation are at an 18-year high, reflecting a robust economy. Now, madam, some of my friends in the opposition branches get a little triggered when we cite some of these statistics. So I'll have to issue a trigger warning. But the data indicates, if you look at the job creation data, for example, in just, look, I'll tell you where it is manipulated. The manipulated data comes from certain organizations where the head of the organization is the head of your manifesto drafting committee. When you cite organizations where the head of that organization is the head of your manifesto drafting committee, that is biased. This is not biased. These are RBI data. These are reflected by the World Bank and by the IMF and by India's pink papers. Next, just in the manufacturing and services sector, in the last 10 years, 89 million jobs have been created. Compare this with only 66 million in the previous 10 years. Look at the economic survey that preceded the budget just a couple of days ago. The economic survey points out that the percentage of youth who are deemed employable has improved from 34% to 51% in the last decade. And this work is being taken forward with many other steps to be mentioned in this budget, which I will come to. Madam Chairperson, I think while increasing these allocations, I'll refer to some of the increased allocations in infrastructure and other areas. While increasing these allocations, for example, my previous speaker just mentioned allocations to health. I think the House deserves to know that in the last 5 years, under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi, Nirmala 9.5%, which is a new record. Madam, the system has to have a capacity to absorb, and that's why it has to be stepped up gradually. You cannot beat this high CAGR commitment to health. But madam, I think one of the most impressive parts of the Modi government, especially in the last 5 years, is how the fiscal deficit has been managed, despite these high allocations for the growth of India. And madam, I refer to the fiscal deficit, it gets referred a lot, but I want to take a moment to go behind why it is important. Madam, in this House, not just in the Treasury benches, but also in the opposition benches, there are many friends with whom I have personally sat and engaged in discussions with multilateral and global financial institutions, and they point out that the single biggest factor they look at when giving a country rating is the fiscal deficit. And that is what impacts inflation, that is what impacts our exchange rate, to what some of our friends have been referring to. Madam, the fiscal deficit, which was inherited 10 years ago at 4.5%, was continually brought down in Modi ji's first government until it reached 3.4%. And then the whole world was turned upside down because of the COVID pandemic, and India managed it far better than all other countries. But yes, of course, we saw a rise of the fiscal deficit to 9.2%. But the roadmap that has been shown since then by the Honorable Finance Minister has been rigidly adhered to, coming down year after year to 6.7%, 6.4%, 5.9%, 5.8%, 5.6%, 4.9% this year, and her commitment to bring it back down to 4.5% next year is extremely commendable. Madam, one of the challenges of high growth rate is sometimes it does create inequalities. And that is an allegation that some of our friends have been wrongly making. And I'll tell you why, madam. Because inequality is something that is measured. There is something called the Gini index, which measures inequality in a society across all countries. Madam, the reality is India's Gini index, which started out 10 years ago in the mid-30s, has remained in the mid-30s. Inequality has not changed by economic parameters. And madam, why this is particularly impressive? But Gini index, why? Just look it up. It's very simple. You can Google it. Now, madam, the important thing is the Gini index of India is far better than other BRICS countries like China and Brazil, which means despite being in the same economic strata, we are a far more equal society. What is even more impressive is that our Gini index compares more favorably than highly developed countries which have been allocating huge sums to welfare, such as the United States, such as the UK. Madam, the reason that our Gini index has been so impressive is because of the allocations and the outputs and the results of many of the aspects of the last 10 budgets, and particularly this historic budget. Let me give you an example, ma'am. The Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. Because to maintain equality in a society, if you provide roti, kapda and makan, that is what helps maintain equality. Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, madam, just a comparison. In the years before the last 10 years, there were schemes like the JNNURM and the Rajiv Awas Yojana, which sanctioned a total of less than 13.5 lakh houses. By comparison, since 2015, the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana has sanctioned 42 million houses, and this year 30 million more houses are going to get built. Take for example, ma'am, the Jal Jeevan Mission, another very key aspect of the various budgets of the Modi governments 1, 2 and 3, especially in the last few years. Ma'am, take a look at this. I'll give you the statistics. The Jal Jeevan Mission, just a few days ago, please have the patience to listen. Please have the patience to listen. The Jal Jeevan Mission. The Jal Jeevan Mission has achieved a milestone of 150 million rural tap connections, up from just 30 million 5 years ago. 5 times growth in just 5 years. This translates to 2.28 lakh villages and 190 districts achieving the Har Ghar Jal milestone. Similarly, Ayushman Bharat, which provides health coverage to hundreds of millions of Indians, the world's largest such program, again this year has got 7,300 crores allocation to take it forward. Madam, there have been some comments on this historic budget's focus on Purvodaya. I think it is important to discuss this. Now, the Prime Minister is on record as having a deep commitment to the Northeast and the East, which he has repeatedly explained, that unless these previously neglected regions get developed, Bharat is not going to get developed. And that is why he has visited the Northeast a record number of times, more than all his predecessors. And the budgets that have been allocated for the East and Northeast have been witness to this transformation. Now, I will come to the point where you might really want to get excited. So, Madam, the East had been traditionally neglected by the center. But what is more tragic is that within the East, there was discrimination from one state to another, despite ministers from those eastern states having had a role in Delhi. Madam, more than 20 years ago, when I first spoke at a budget, in those days the railways budget was different, separate. I was myself shocked to find some of the statistics. Pani. Madam, I still remember the statistics more than 20 years later. And please, my friends, please reflect on this. 20 years ago, when I first spoke on the budget, I found that West Bengal had the country's highest rail track density. And I remember the number. It was 42 kilometers per square kilometer. Right next door to West Bengal was my state of Odisha, lowest in the country, 14 kilometers per square kilometer. Every year, we used to appeal to the center to increase our allocation. We used to keep getting a few piddly 100 crores. And our appeal was, at least please give us 1,000 crores. In the first Modi budget 10 years ago, we were gobsmacked when the allocation straight away went 5 times to 5.